Welcome to Beyond the Drip, a podcast about all things infusion pharmacy related. My name's Jon Love, host of Beyond the Drip. It is sponsored by ProChant. We want to thank ProChant and all of their efforts to sponsor this. We're so excited. I have all of my co-hosts here, Pam McIntyre, Paula Roth, Brian O'Sullivan, and of course, Brandon Carpenter. Hey, everybody. How we doing today?
Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Good. Well, we're right off of NHIA, the National Home Infusion Association, where I got to see all of you lovely people there. Really big momentum. Of course, our last guest was Connie Sullivan, president of NHIA, just fantastic. And so on the heels of that, we all decided, hey, let's get together and talk about, one of these things that I think we all heard at NHIA. And today, if you're listening, our topic is going to be the talent crisis that exists in infusion pharmacy. I walked around NHIA, imagine that, talking to everybody. I think it was my 12th or 13th NHIA, by the way. So I'm getting really old and I know a lot of the same people, but everybody seemed to be talking about two or three things, right? And I think we expected a lot of those things. But one thing that kept coming up was there is a massive talent crisis that exists right now in infusion pharmacy, and everybody's feeling it in all sectors. So I think it was only natural for us to come in at our next Beyond the Drip and talk about it. And I think what we'll do is, guys, we'll talk about like what we're seeing, why it exists, and what in the world can we do about it as an industry. And so I think I'll start out, Pam, and start with you really out of the gate, if that's okay. I'm Pam McIntyre, been a nurse here for longer than I probably am allowed to say, Pam, but you've been around, you've worked for some monster companies, you're still expert nursing for infusion. You own your own company, you travel the country doing consulting. Pam, let's talk about the fact that the elephant in the room is there are a lot of big players coming in or trying to be big players in infusion that don't really understand how complex the skill set and niche the skill requirements are in infusion. So I'm going to go to Brandon Carpenter in a second on maybe the tech side, but I want to start out with you because you're kind of our clinical person here. It's just different from regular other medical healthcare.
It really is. When you think about it, the core skills, the pharmacy management, the dispensing, pharmacy licensed pharmacist in charge, you need all of these things. But when it comes down to home infusion, I've always said, and as I learned this from an old pharmacist I worked with, the pharmacists have to be part nurse and the nurses have to be part pharmacist the way you think, because the consideration of both disciplines is key to getting your patients taken care of in a timely fashion. And when you're talking about acute care, with some of the major players spinning that off and not providing anymore, really the responsibility for people that are still doing that is only tighter and tighter as far as timelines, with people being discharged from the hospital emergently. And, the clock is ticking for some of these providers. I wish there was a giant database. Now, I'm not talking Big Brother here, but there's so much flux in the market. Pharmacists are being laid off. How do we find these people? First of all, how do we keep them in the industry? Because people with decades of experience are bolting because either of experiences or for fear of their livelihood, thinking that their program's going to be cut, they're going to have to go through this again. How do we help them identify some of these newer providers that are going to provide these services for patients so they can service the population? Because the need is not going away, it's only going to increase. So between that and nursing, we need to somehow nurture this pool and stop the hemorrhage.
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting. So I don't know if everybody knows this. So 2024 NHIA study, 72% of pharmacists spend their time on patient care tasks, assessments, care planning, and only 28% on actual like drug prep and compounding. And so you actually have a need, and Pam, I'll stay here with you for a second because it's kind of, my guess, a little frustrating. You have a need for dual clinical and technical expertise, right? Not, a clinician and technical, but yet only 15% of all pharmacy schools currently offer anything elective on infusion. 15%. And those are all regional. So like you go to pharmacy school in Memphis and you say, well, we have it in, Idaho. You're like, I don't live in Idaho. I live in, Kansas City. I don't go to Idaho. I don't go to Memphis, and then I'm making this up as I go, but only 15% offer that.
If you think about it, the schools of pharmacy, most of the clinicals are done either retail or in a hospital. Most hospitals for your garden variety hospital system does not have a home infusion program. Yeah, it's increasing, but it isn't as common as we would think. I think our visibility is skewed because we only know the ones that had the programs.
Right.
So you had this lack of clinical experience in pharmacy school, even exposure to the industry. And I think that when you think about the particulars of home infusion, whether it's specialty or acute care, the niche knowledge is so important. Most pharmacists that I've worked with aren't comfortable for a couple of years. And that's immersive experience because of all the different things they run into, because all these patients have lines.
Well, it's funny that you said that. If you listen to our last Beyond the Drip pod, we had Connie Sullivan, and it's funny to hear that the president of NHIA say that she graduated from pharmacy school and then took a job and was looking to move somewhere. And back then she said that, there were it was like a catalog of jobs or something. And she was like, oh, right here, but she didn't know what a fusion pharmacy was. So she got the job as being the pick, right? Pharmacist in charge at a fusion farm. Then she's like, my first time to go to NHIA was because, so the president of NHIA goes there originally for the first time because she has no idea about the new job she got. So, which is really a funny story, but that was so many years ago and we're still there. We're
Yeah.
still there. So, Brandon, I'll come to you for a second because you do everything tech. Brandon Carpenter, the CEO and founder of MedEdge, tech and data. We hear people all the time say, "Oh, I'm in healthcare. I'm a data person. I'm a tech person," and then they come here and they get their lunch eaten. Like when you think about the specific skills that are needed from a data and a technology, like, how does that land on you?
Yeah, I mean, what we see, and not only for folks from the data side of things and trying to learn these complex systems, but even new entrants as far as technology comes. We see so many cases where, oh, we've got this platform, it's working in a different industry, we're going to move it to healthcare, right? It's like, hey, we're just doing it. And for some cases, it's like texting a patient, okay, that's kind of a commodity thing. But when they start bringing new products in and things like that, I'll tell you this great story. I was on with a new entrance of software for Infusion. And, we were walking through it with a potential client and all this kind of stuff. And the client asked about nursing tracking capabilities. And the software they seriously said the words, what do you need to deal with nursing? You're a pharmacy, right? And so you're just like the
Yeah,
eyes of
tell
the
me.
client just like popped out
Yeah.
of their head.
Tell me you know nothing about what we do in one sentence. Like,
Right.
why would you
Yeah.
need nursing? What do you think we are? Like,
Yeah.
Hudson's pharmacy down the street? Like, what
Right.
that drives me crazy.
So, from a data perspective, trying to come in and understand something and, just going back to the whole pharmacist, who, I have a friend who was in a retail pharmacy space and got laid off. And he's like, everybody's getting laid off. And I said, well, have you thought about, you've got some monsters in the area that are specialty and infusion. And he goes, what's that? And it's just like, you know, so many years ago, I remember at NHIA, there was a presentation talking about, infusion and specialty compared to the overall healthcare spend, right? And it was like something ridiculous, like, and I'm probably going to mess up this metric and I apologize, but I believe it was something like 1/10 of 1%. And they were like, basically our industry is a rounding error to most of healthcare, right? And so when we talk about the niche, we think about there's some monster pharmacies out there that, are operating in the billions. But when you look at healthcare overall, you're just like, we're nothing. And so we don't get a story that's being told to folks in pharmacy school and folks, probably in rev cycle management, all that kind of stuff. It's just not seen. And that translates to technology too, right? And so we work with pharmacies who, try to build their own data team and they hire, one or two people. I'm like, you don't need to do that because it's going to take them, a lot of times we see people where they're not even in the industry. So trying to teach them the industry, the complex data systems, the business itself, like how that business does things, it'll take them 18 to 24 months before they have their legs underneath them. And if, they're, just a data engineer or something, they're probably gone in 36 months. So you spent 2 years to train them for one, productive year for them to walk away for you to start the whole process over again. Right.
Do you think that's why so many people are outsourcing so much data work in it?
100, right. It's 100% because they're just like, I can get this done and get this transferred over and kind of, boil down to stuff like 100%, John.
Yeah, I figured as much. So, I think we have a talent crisis in infusion, and we're trying to stack up these. And the very first thing is we have all of these folks in broader healthcare and in the medical community who don't understand how very specialized this area is. And until we start, and I know NHI is doing a great job of trying to do it, we've got to get that out to the broader community. We just got to. And I think pharmacies have got to go out there and stop pretending like, I'll be honest, that they can just go and hire anybody. Like, it's a really, really niche, both clinical and technical. Obviously, the next thing I'm thinking about here, I'm going to go to you, Paula Roth, is a massive, massive shortage of revenue cycle experts here. And this is more than anything. We're just talking about the fact that, well, I'll just go grab some revenue or some people. That's what, how many times, Paul, have you heard an infusion pharmacy saying, well, I'm going to hire a new RCM director, and she's been over a hospital or over several doctors' offices, and you're like, this is going to be terrible. It's going to tell us why.
Well, a lot of, I hear it all the time, right? I've heard it probably 10 times in the last couple of weeks. Rev cycle is rev cycle.
Ugh, no, it's not.
And I'm like, well, I mean, until you understand that that's not the case, it's hard to have those communications with people about what challenges they're going to face. So,
But Paula, imagine someone saying to you, "Food is food, so McDonald's is the same as Ruth Chris." So that's all. No, it's not. It's not. And that's what I think of, Paula, when somebody says rev cycle's rev cycle. You're like, that's like telling me that I can take the McDonald's cook and go send them to a 3-star Michelin restaurant, and that quiche is going to be amazing. It's not. It's not.
that's a great analogy. A lot of the things that we're talking about, understanding the complexity of the business goes right into the complexity of rev cycle. So when you talk about pharmacists spending, I don't like what you say, 70% of their time doing care coordination and care planning and those types of things. When you're billing for infusion therapy, I try to explain it like this. So think about going into Walmart and getting a product, right? You're going in to get a can of paint, basically, right? You walk into Walmart, you get it, you walk out. Well, think about now Walmart only sells paint. So you have to go somewhere else to get the paintbrush, and you have to go somewhere else to get the tape, and you have to go somewhere else to get a planner to tell you how to make it all pretty and what colors go with all these things. I mean, that's infusion therapy, right? You have pharmacy, you have product, the supplies, the pumps, the tubes, the kits, all the things that go along with dispensing the drug. And then you have the clinical care, pharmacists, care coordination, nurses, and often the way our system is structured, they're all being billed separate places. Right. So the drugs may be going to the PBM, and the supplies may be going under the DME benefit. And then the nurse, God knows why, sometimes still today, the nurse is covered under a home health benefit. So you have the drugs under the RX benefit, the supplies under the medical benefit, and then the clinical care under sometimes home health benefit. Like, who can figure that out, right? If you don't understand what you're looking at, you don't understand what infusion is, you don't understand the level of complexity involved in taking care of these patients, how in the world are you going to figure out how to bill it? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there is no place to go to school to learn infusion rev cycle. I mean, at least we still have pharmacy schools where pharmacists can go and become pharmacists. There is no place to develop those rev cycle experts.
And listen, we love our infusion pharmacies, right? We love our specialty infusions, but many times a lot of our listeners are trying to cut corners. And when you try to cut corners on revenue cycle, I had a construction friend who owns a big construction company tell me this. And I said, that sounds like revenue cycle management. The cheap option is always the most expensive option. You just don't have a time machine. So, hey, they're going to do this for me for 2.1%. You're going to lose $1 million. You don't know it yet. Oh, my internal team is incredible. Okay. Are they keeping up with it? Oh, no, but they'll be fine. Like, I don't know. I mean, because this is the one thing, a revenue cycle, that you hear all the time. And then people are frustrated when they find out why am I going to write off $1 million? Like, no one wants to go in. I had to, somebody say this to me, Paula, and I'll get your thoughts because you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. When I was running a rev cycle, I told someone, no one wants to come to you on your team and say, you have to write off $1 million. So they keep telling you, we have an AR project. We have an AR project. We have an AR project, right? Yeah. Yeah. That's because like, I mean, that's like me. I just don't want to go, tell my wife something because I know. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm continue to work on it. That thing's broken. It's broken. And I don't know how to fix it, but I don't want to tell her yet. Like, I mean, Paul, that's what you deal with every day, right? No one wants to wake the king or queen at 3 a.m., right? And no one wants to go in there and say, you're going to have to write off $1 million.
Absolutely. I mean, I spend a large part of my time doing our assessments and analysis, right? And without digging in claim by claim, patient by patient, you have to have a formula, some type of formula, bad debt reserve calculation, something to be able to plan for that, because you're right. Not only does nobody on the team want to say, oh, sorry, Mr. CEO, I have to write off $1 million. Also, the payers won't often say, we're not paying for this, right? They're like, oh, well, correct this claim or give us 90 days to process that appeal. So by the time the payers are done making you jump through hoops, you jump through these hoops and somebody then realizes we didn't have the right hoop to jump through. We aren't going to get paid. It's well into a mature rev cycle period. It takes a while for, I think, people to realize, oh crap, I really can't collect this. And then even longer to get to the people that need to know, right? That there's a chunk of money that's uncollectible. So you're right. It's twofold, and people don't want to admit, this is going to be a write-off, but also it takes a while to figure it out, right? Sometimes it
Yeah.
takes a while to figure out that it's going to be a write-off. That's why I feel like, bad debt reserve calculations are critical, especially for smaller organizations that might not be planning like that. And that they
Right.
understand that they should be putting some money aside, some reserves, some funding,
Yep.
something, because that's a big problem when you have to write off $1 million from a $10 million business.
Yeah, I'm going to move to our third point of why we have a talent crisis in infusion. But before I do, I want to finish here, Paula, with you and tell you a quick story and get your thoughts on it. So I was talking to, back when I was running Infusion for ProChamp, I was talking to an owner of a mid-sized pharmacy. I'm laughing already. And they had found out that they were using the wrong code to bill with. And the payer was paying it, but it was about 48% of their reimbursement of what they have gotten if they had used the right code. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The owner looks at me and says, they never told us we were using the wrong code. I said, you thought the payer was going to call you and say, excuse me, Mr. O'Sullivan, if you use this code, you could double your pay. I mean, and so they used the wrong code for a year and a half. This person's internal team did. Got paid 48%, 48 cents on the dollar, what they could have gotten paid. And their response to me was, well, they never told us we were using the wrong code. I'm like, it's a payer. Did you, like, Paula, am I correct? When would a payer call you and say, we could give you a lot more money? They're going to let you do stupid things. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. The payer, through a denial or something, maybe you would identify that you're billing the wrong code, but that stuff happens all the time, all the time. I'm working with a client right now, and they're, doing some things, and they're like, we're getting paid for this service. We're getting paid fine. Like, why are you elevating this to me? Like, it's not a problem. We're getting paid. And I'm saying, okay, but you're not this type of provider. You're getting paid because the claims are billed wrong. That's why they're paying you. If you billed the claim the right way, you wouldn't get paid. Now they're paying you. What I'm trying to prevent from happening is a year down the road in an audit, they're going to recoup all this money. And
Oh, the clawback. Yeah.
that's detrimental for a small little provider.
Oh,
So it goes both ways. And not only are the payer going to, they're not going to say, oh, Mr. Provider, you're using the wrong code. We'll pay you more if you use this code. But they'll also pay you if your claims are wrong, and then audit you a year, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years down the road, and they'll recoup that money.
and they won't just recruit part of it.
Yeah,
They'll get all of it.
absolutely.
Paula, a friend of mine says a clawback is like a divorce. You just get a piece of paper and you just lose half of your stuff. Like, sorry, this is going away. Everything you worked for, you thought you had, it's coming back. Like, it's like,
That's really hard to, really
yeah.
hard to explain to somebody that's been doing things a certain way for a certain amount of time. And then, I come in and explain why that shouldn't be. And, some providers get angry. And I'm like, look, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to tell you that you
Yeah.
have risk here. And
Yeah.
this risk could be long term potential devastating to smaller providers. So it's tough.
Yeah, our RCM, we have to have, it's a talent crisis. Everywhere, everywhere. I want to go broader here. And Brian O'Sullivan, owner of the Sullivan Group, you're kind of our broader healthcare mind a lot of times. You work in this industry, but you work all over in different industries around the credentialing side and payer contracting side. Brian, the numbers coming out about pharmacy careers are super, super worrisome. And I want to ask you why you think that is. I'm going to give you a couple stats, okay, and let you kind of rip off of it. So the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy, a 60% decline in pharmacy school applications in the last 10 years. That is worthy for me to say again, for my listeners, our listeners, 60% of applications the last 10 years is down for all across the board, the College of Pharmacies. And so why are we seeing numbers like that? Why do you think we're seeing numbers like that? What that stat means is over the last 10 years, we've seen a 60% decline, Brian, in applications, not in people, but like people don't even want to try to get into pharmacy school. I think we should walk that down and ask, because that's obviously part of the talent crisis, is that we're 60% down on people even wanting to go to pharmacy. Like what's on top of your brain? Why do you think that is?
I think some of it's, I go back to my high school brain, right? And I thought for about 5 minutes I wanted to be a pharmacist because I was a surfer. And Pepperdine University, which is right above Malibu, had a pharmacy program. I can
That
be a
is true.
pharmacist and I can surf, right? But then I looked at how hard becoming a pharmacist was, and I thought, maybe not. That said, I think the perception of a pharmacist to most people is CVS, Walgreens, those kind of things, which it doesn't look like the sexiest job out there. It might be really attractive to some people because it's predictable. They like interfacing with people, those kind of things. But infusion pharmacy, most people don't know an infusion pharmacist, but it's actually a lot more, in my opinion, would be a lot more interesting, demanding. You've got to
Probably.
know a lot of things. You've got to talk to doctors. You've got to, sterile compounding, all of those kind of compliance issues. And then we talked about the stat of, still 70% of your time's interacting with patients, education, training. If you're not an introvert, that's still a pretty attractive job, but most people don't know an infusion pharmacist. I'll say my wife is an actuary and she was a pension actuary. How do you become a pension actuary, right?
I don't know what that is. Oh, no. I just want to put that out. I don't know what that is, but you don't have to tell us. But that's
retirement.
okay. I'm just proving your point.
Exactly. I think part of it is can we get radiologists? Same thing. Of everybody thinks an ER physician or an ortho surgeon is really cool, but a radiologist who doesn't have, I saw something, top 10 clinical jobs for introverts. Well, if you're not an introvert, do you want to be a radiologist? But hospital-based radiology actually has a lot of interaction with other clinicians and those kind of things. So I'm just putting a different cover on the book, so to speak. An infusion pharmacy to me seems like a pretty attractive job if people understand what it is.
Yeah, and it seems like it's even a sub problem, right? If we're 60% down on pharmacists in general, and infusion pharmacy is this tiny little hidden part of pharmacy, then no one's going to get there. And listen, okay, everybody knows me and all of our listeners know me. I'm a little bit of a loudmouth, so I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. Brian, give me permission to be the old man yelling at the sky, right? When I look at the average 20-year-old, 22-year-old, maybe even 24-year-old, it feels like there is a generation coming behind us that is more emotion driven. I'm sure that people will be frustrated with that, but I still think that most people would say that's probably true. And when you look at, hey, you're going to sit in a room and you're going to be precise and you're going to do this really well and it's going to be redundant and people's lives are and they're going to be safe because of it. And I don't know that that's Instagram worthy, Brian. And I think there's a lot of folks who are like, I really need to be super fulfilled, whatever that means. And I think you can be fulfilled in a lot of different ways. But sometimes, I think we have to talk about that, right? Like, the world tells us that, your job has to be this emotional, amazing experience when sometimes it's just doing a good job. And I think we've lost that some. And pharmacy is redundant. It is. So let me give you a stat here, Brian, because I want to finish this up. But Health Resources and Services Administration is projecting a shortage of 5,000 pharmacists in the next 15 years due to both declining enrollment and retirement. When was the last time you guys met a 23-year-old, 24-year-old pharmacist? Every time I meet one, they look a little more like Brian to me. They're just, and so 15 years from now, I'm going to look even older. Brian will probably look the same. But, the reality of it is we have got to get people back into pharmacy. We have got to get people who see pharmacy, young people saying, this is a great job, a steady job. And Brian, I'll give you the last word here on how do you think we as an industry can start to do that?
I think, people's motivations, you mentioned sort of Instagram worthy influencers, right? I don't really know what an influencer does. I kind of understand it through my kids, but there's a lot of affirmation in that, right? If you're an influencer, you're an influencer. Entrepreneurship. I think a young generation just really wants that flexibility of I'm starting things, I'm doing new stuff, I'm on the cutting edge. And pharmacy, doesn't have that perception, but I think the market takes care of itself, right? And there's always greed, right? What's the movie, Wolf of Wall Street? Greed is good.
That's just Wall Street. Greed is good. That's Gordon Gekko, in case anybody, the 80s kids out there remember. Gordon Gekko, Wall Street, greed is good.
Right. So as the supply of pharmacists decrease, the incomes will increase. Things that, when you're in high school and college of what are the top, 10 paying jobs that are expanding, right? So you see that you can make a salary, let's say it's average entry level pharmacist is now at $290,000. And the 10-year growth prospect is we need 26,000 pharmacists to meet current demand. The market will take care of that. But right now, I think, John, I'm a little bit pessimistic of the numbers you're showing are real. And pharmacy training is a long time. We talked about the actual postgraduate, when you're actually competent and functioning, and then the narrow part of the funnel of clinical pharmacists, hospital, long-term care, retail, and then 10% are going into infusion. Somehow, fusion needs to have an appeal versus, just randomly finding your way into that 10%. But it will. The market takes care of itself eventually.
Yeah, and so let's turn to kind of the fourth thing here is just, burnout, right? Like, okay, if we look at this as a math equation, okay, small amount of people who know how to do this, less people going into the field, more difficult every year, that's going to create a really stressed out workforce. The other thing it's going to do is, and I think we can all be honest about this, is it's going to put the power into probably, maybe for the first time ever in this industry, the common experienced worker in infusion has all the leverage. And this is probably me talking to the owners out there that listen to this. You do not have leverage over a revenue cycle manager. You do not have leverage over an amazing nurse or a cleaner, a pick. You don't. Maybe you have leverage over clinicians, right? Because they're on site. But I can tell you for sure, revenue cycle managers, data people, Brandon Carpenter, people who know the EMRs in our system, you don't have any leverage over, right? COVID changed all of that. They can work from home. They can live in Idaho and work for a California pharmacy and decide, you know what? I'm going to go to a Florida pharmacy. You know what? I'll go. So, we both have two things. We have the burnout we're dealing with, as well as just the fact that they don't have leverage anymore. Brandon, I'll go with you at start. Lead a whole data team and a product team that's dedicated to home infusion, specialty pharmacy. Like, the burnout's real, right?
Yeah. Like, I remember this book, Rework. I don't know if you've ever read that before.
Yep.
It's by the guys that created Basecamp, but they talk about how proximity should not be a limitation to great talent. And I think probably COVID busted that up, right? The final remaining things of that, it's like when we all had to go remote, it was like, well, wait a minute. I'm paying somebody who was local to me who might not be as talented as somebody I could find somewhere else, but I want talent over mediocrity because now they don't have to come to the office. So, certainly along those lines, because we think about the pockets, right? Like Columbus and Orlando and Pittsburgh and probably Houston and things like that have a a bolus of some of these, resources that, even MedEdge is looking for. Uh, but they're like, I don't want to have to get out in Houston early morning commute. I don't want to have to
Oh yeah.
uh, fight the traffic and find parking and all this kind of stuff. So they're going remote, and and I'll be honest with you. I was talking with somebody who owns their own rev cycle company, and they were like, yeah, we thought we were paying competitively, and we had 3 people leave us last week. Where did they go? They went to Sonic, John. They went to Sonic because fast food places were paying competitive, right?
Yeah,
And so they're
that's
like,
a
I don't
great
have to
point.
do all this.
Fantastic point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Paula Roth, I'm going to come to you on this because you run, I don't know what your title is, Queen of Infusion at ProChance. You're a very big deal. You run the infusion division over there at ProChance. So gone are the days where you could just go pick up a biller, right? So did you know that what you've been paying for billers, like folks just walk around in flip flops and scan stuff in Amazon warehouses for now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How hard is that affecting the talent crisis for infusion pharmacies?
Well, we approach Hannah in a little bit of a unique situation. We have a big offshore team that does a lot of things for us. We have onshore experts that have been in this industry for a really long time. I'm telling you, developing that talent is tenuous. But if you have the right people leading the ship, you can do some things behind the scenes that make the billing less tedious. You have to be, I guess, less expertise in actually doing the billing if you have the experts around making sure software systems are set up right, workflows are
Right.
efficient and effective, and you have compliance, checks and balances in place. So we're in a unique position to do some different things, but recruiting talent and keeping talent is a real challenge. I started in this industry much longer than I would like to believe that I've been in this industry. But we recruited people off the street that didn't know infusion, and we had the resources and means to teach them and to grow those leaders. I'm happy to say, proud to say that most of them are still with me today, 10, 15 years later. It's not something to
But
do
they're
with,
not making what they made 10 years ago, I can tell you that.
nope.
Yeah, they're still with you, but they're like, "Yeah, I'm still with you, but there's a cost to that," right?
You have to be willing to invest. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't, it's hard to say it any other way. It's an investment. I mean, yeah, you can go get a medical biller off the street, or you can go outsource to ABC Medical. I don't even know if that's a real company. I was trying to be facetious. I don't want to offend.
It probably is.
Whatever, and outsource to some non-industry outsourcing company, and maybe they'll do okay for a while, but the risk long term is significant enough that I would not advise anybody to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think across the board, burnout is very real because you're not able to get the people. And so you're at risk. And then I think that the talent crisis is everybody across the country in infusion pharmacy is just 30 days away from losing someone really key. Because here's the deal. I sit in the catbird seat, right? So I'll tell all of you who are listening, all of you owners, all of you VPs, all you presidents that are listening to this, I talk to tons of you and the people who work for you. They're most of them are willing to go somewhere else and you're all out trying to poach each other's. And that's what happens when there's not enough talent. Brandon Carpenter has to hold on to his data experts because pharmacies are trying to poach it, and make no mistake, Brandon Carpenter's trying to poach the right guy or girl from a pharmacy too. Okay. So like this is just, I don't know. It feels like free agency, Brian O'Sullivan. I'll go to you here. And as we kind of start to wrap things up, it feels like free agency in football or basketball. Like these folks know their worth. And so we just have a overall like talent crisis. So Brian, how much do you think technology as we go? I know that we'll go to Brandon next to this, but do you see like, I mean, should we be, are folks looking at AI and saying like, all right, we're just not going to be able to rely on humans as much here?
That was spooky. You just read my mind.
I do that
I
sometimes.
just had this random thought pop into my head. The old saying, the business saying, innovate or die, right? Of you got to keep ahead of the curve, but also it's automate or die, right?
Absolutely.
And a talent shortage, automating everything and having people work at the highest level of their training rather than menial tasks. I think that's where the success is. And I think there's a lot of investment in automation and innovation because, John, I think you've said it before, the labor shortage isn't changing.
No, We're not going back.
There's not people out there that we don't know of.
Yeah.
And the training pipeline, which I think is our next topic, that's not full. So it's not like there's reinforcements coming in 2 years. We just need to hold out for 2 years. This is it, we're on the battle lines and there's nobody coming to save us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, you have to double click on that just a little bit, Brian. Automation is key, right? If you have the right structure and you have the right checks and balance and setting up automation to do some of the less, I guess, technical things, then you can spend your top talent resources doing some of the things that are more complex, more involved, that require that level of expertise. Every position in the rev cycle, every person in every position doesn't have to be an expert, but you have to have someone setting up those expert processes, some balances and cues. And that's tough too. You talk about burnout, like you get tired of telling Mr. CEO you have to write off $1 million, right? That's exhausting. That leads right
Well,
into that burnout conversation.
if you keep doing that, you're going to get burned out, as in like you're fired. But
Right.
but I'll tell you this, man. I'll tell you this, and I don't mind it. And I talk to, again, a lot of CEOs, a lot of presidents, men and women, and I tell everybody, if you deal with me, I can be frustrating, but the one thing is, I'm going to be honest. There are many times that I see people fire people, and I'm like, this is not that person's fault. This is the fact that you won't invest, you don't have enough people, and you continue to do this on the cheap. And you act like it's 2003 or 2005. It's not. You're in a different environment, and the ones who are willing to invest will go more and go more. So Pam, I know you had something to say, but I also want to ask you, as we talk about AI, automation, innovation, and you're our North Star, you're a nurse. We can't automate that, right? In the end, we have to take care of patients because that's what we're here to do.
You're right. We started this conversation talking about the exodus of pharmacists and the need for pharmacists. We need to talk about nursing as well. We can't afford to let one more person that has experience walk out the door, because the roll down, when this starts with the exponential amount of work that's on the rest of the staff, is not sustainable. That goes for nurses, that goes for pharmacists, that goes for techs, because these people are going to get burned out by the extra hours. They're going to make mistakes. We are all human. We've all made mistakes. We need to retain the talent we have.
Yep.
And don't be cheap. Pay them.
I want to tell you a story here. A friend of mine's an oncology nurse in a clinic, and I was talking to her, and I told her, oh yeah, I'm in home infusion. I said, oh, would you ever be a home infusion nurse? And she's like, absolutely not. And I was like, what? She's like, no. She's like, I'm not going in and out of homes. I don't know the status of home, dealing with family members, different therapies, switch, swap. She's like, that's way too hard. So, and like, this person, who I think is a really smart person, told me there's no damn way I'll be a home infusion nurse. And so that would tell me, Pam, that home infusion nurses are really critical and difficult. And they have to be, and I just say, as a leader, you gotta, he or she, you gotta retain them, you gotta pay them, you gotta treat them right.
And they have to. The biggest trait I look for when I'm staffing for a company is nurses that are willing to learn, because every drug is new to somebody at some point. If you can find a nurse that's given biologics, that has good central line experience and good IV skills, and they're willing to do home visits, hop on it, because you can train them. And if you foster that talent, they can mentor others. And you know what? If you find a nurse that's leaving because she's dissatisfied or he's dissatisfied somewhere, there's other people that are going to follow them. So you have to be able to recognize these talent pools. I hate to say it, but it's all about attracting who can take care of your patients, because the people with the clinicians are going to win the game. As long as we have the support from revenue cycle and automation and contracts, we can win it. And my job is feathering the nest of these companies so they're prepared to do that, and then connecting them with other resources so the back end can bolster the clinicians.
Yeah, I'll sum up our
interesting.
Go ahead, Brandon. Go ahead.
I was gonna say what's interesting to me, right, is we talk about these resources that have the leverage, like the clinicians and the pharmacists and all this kind of stuff, and the directors of reimbursement. But the flip side of that, right, like if we look at a different industry, like the fast food industry, right, and I remember when mid 2010s or whatever, they were like, we want $15-20 an hour, all this kind of stuff, and in a lot of cases they got that, but there was a consequence to that. And now nobody mans the front counter. You have to go up to a TV and order your food, and you don't get that human experience. And so, we see AI and as you said, automation and things like that. Like those medial tasks of, I need to schedule my nursing visit, or I need to, whatever the case may be. Like I see in a not so distant future where, yeah, pharmacies are going to be cutting back on staff and implementing those types of solutions while having to invest in those that have the skills, the home infusion nurses, the directors of reimbursement, even to some point, probably, Paul, I don't know, I hear more and more about AI getting involved in RCM. For me, from a coding perspective, I look at it and go, it's a ever changing, like you'll be standing on what you think is a solid footing, and then Monday morning comes along and that pillar's no longer there. So I can't imagine what that would look like from, how do we train AI on that? But those are some of the things that I see that, there will be some give and take there.
There's so many things involved, Brandon. Listen, I wholeheartedly believe there's a place for AI to do some things, denial probability scoring and things like that. Like there's a place, but there is also a lot of risk in some other places. So I talk about automation, as like setting up rules, but you have to have checks and balances for that. You have to. The one other thing though I want to talk about that you just said is everything changes in the blink of an eye. Our president of the United States just signed an executive order about most favored nation pricing. And I don't think that's what he called it, but it's basically some old school Medicaid plans used to do this years ago, where they will only pay you the lowest price they've ever paid anybody in 50 states. Do you know what a disaster that was? You're in like a big city and cost of everything is crazy, and they're going to pay you the same thing as they paid, like, I don't know, some little, I don't know. I just feel like there's potential for that to be a disaster. You think about all the things that we were talking about at the end of last year with all the changes, like we were going into 2025 planning for this big thing. And then all of a sudden that stopped and that big thing was no longer a thing. So
The Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, very, very valid point with AI, and things change all the time in what we do. And how do you stay up with that, with it?
Yeah.
I think about competitive bidding, right? Switching to DME and how it was like, pharmacies would be like, well, I'm servicing, this populated area, but somehow I got this, remote, place 3 hours away. What the heck? Like it costs me much different pricing to go service that patient. And so, yeah, from your perspective of like, hey, how do we, Idaho's got this for 50 cents. Meanwhile, Georgia's got it for $50. Like that's going to tank people. So yeah,
Absolutely. It's going to be tough to manage that for sure.
I think summing up the conversation like this, you got Brandon Carpenter, MedEdge, Brian O'Sullivan Group, Paula Roth, ProChant, Pam McIntyre, expert infusion nursing consulting. We travel the country, thousands of customers, thousands of people, talk to everybody. I think the message would be, this is not going to change easy. You've got to have better training pipelines. And here's the big, you're going to have to, if you don't want to pay your people, somebody else is more than willing to. And the ones who will separate themselves will be the ones who say, hey, right now, if you look at it from a value standpoint, I consider myself an entrepreneur business guy. So I love value propositions. The people who are good in home infusion, specialty infusion centers are now the most valuable thing we have because they're so small of them. That's where our investment has to be. We have to invest more in those people, and we have to invest in a rigorous training program and a pipeline to try to get more. And I don't know if that's, I don't know. And I don't know that we know that how that's doing. It'd be interesting to see, NHIA comes down on this, or NICA, or maybe NASP and some others, but I'd like to see that. But it's been a fantastic conversation around the talent crisis that exists. I think we know there's a talent crisis. It's not going to get better tomorrow. And so we're going to have to buckle down. And this has been a fantastic conversation. I thank you all for being here. Again, this is Beyond the Drip. We have been talking about the talent crisis that exists in home infusion, specialty infusion centers, and I would say even specialty pharmacy. And so with my co-host, so thank you for listening to Beyond the Drip. It is sponsored by ProChant, and we are so thankful to the group at ProChant for continuing to help us get our message out about our wonderful home infusion and specialty infusion industry. So thanks to all my great co-host. And as we move in the summer, our next step, guys, is we'll be at National Infusion Center Association in Miami. Always awful to be in Miami in June. So looking forward to seeing you and everybody else there. And so have a great day, and thanks for being here with us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
At ProChant, we're obsessed with revenue capture. Revenue cycle management isn't just a back office process. It's the engine that keeps your business moving. That's why we partner with you to keep things running smoothly and securely, from intake to collections, so you can prioritize cash, not the chaos. We specialize in home-based care, combining US-led teams, AI-powered workflows, and transparent dashboards to drive guaranteed results. We leverage over 25 years of experience to optimize your RCM with proven best practices tailored to fit your specific needs. Our expert RCM pros are backed by powerful tech, giving you better efficiency, better revenue capture, and more time to focus on what really matters, your patients. Because when your financial engine's firing on all cylinders, everything else moves forward. ProChant. Contact us now to talk to an expert.